Hello and happy Librarians Day. I'm pleased to welcome you to the 2022 Summer Scares middle grade panel. I'm Julia Smith, a senior editor at Booklist and the middle grade expert on this year's committee for Summer Scares. This program has been developed by the Horror Writers Association to promote the horror genre in libraries. To make this experience anything but frightful, the committee member Conrad Stump has put together an awesome free programming guide to help librarians engage with patrons and the perfectly dreadful books that we have selected for this year's program. A link for the guide will be provided at the end of the webinar. And you can also find it, my high tech, at this blog post.
We'll hire.
Thanks, everyone. Teamwork. Okay, lovely. Moving on to the good stuff. Today, I am so delighted to talk to our three amazing middle grade authors. We have India Hill Brown, author of The Forgotten Girl, published by Scholastic Press. Christian Mckay Heideker, author of the Newbery Honor-winning Scary Stories for Young Foxes, published by Henry Holt and Company. And Eliza Lane, creator of the Stonewall Honor-winning graphic novel, Beetle and the Hollow Bones, published by Athenaeum Books for young readers. Thank you all so much for taking the time to talk to me today. I would like to begin.
For that, not for me.
I'd love to begin by giving you all a chance to introduce yourselves and tell our audience a little bit about your book. And India, can you get us started?
Sure thing. So I am India Hill Brown, author of The Forgotten Girl and The Girl in the Lake, which just came out in January. The Forgotten Girl, though, is about two kids named Iris and Daniel and what happens after they discover an abandoned and segregated cemetery in their neighborhood and awaken a ghost there named Avery. They can't figure out if she's a good ghost or a bad ghost, if she wants revenge or what she wants. So I will be doing a little reading from The Forgotten Girl. Daniel reached out his hand and pulled her up. Iris shook the feeling off and smiled. She was proud of her work. I've never made a snow angel this good. She looked at Daniel to agree, but he was leaning over, frowning at her angel. What's that? He asked, pointing at it. Look. She peered more closely at the angel. The way her dress flared around her feet, her arms frozen in midair as if she finally gotten their attention. There was something buried, just barely, under the snow angel's chest, where her heart would be. It glistened in the moonlight. They bent over and worked together to uncover it. Their hands froze in midair, mimicking the angel's. Daniel gasped. Iris, that's... Iris stared down at the crumbling stone, a gust of cold air pushing past her, forcing her to speak. A grave. The wind whistled as they looked down at the marker and the angels surrounding it. She almost looked like she was guarding it. Iris felt the sensation of someone standing behind her and whipped around just in case. She thought she saw something flicker in the distance, and she forced herself to calm down. It must be one of those twinkling lights from the Christmas house. Iris shivered. It felt even colder, but surely that was because they had stopped running around. What does it say? She whispered, her voice cutting through the silence. Daniel wiped the falling snow away from his glasses, took a breath, and knelt down by the small gray square. He was shivering too. Avery Moore, rest in peace, darling. May 5th, 1945 to September 7th, 1956. Daniel stared at the grave marker for a second, his lips moving as if he was counting under his breath, then looked up at Iris, his eyes even bigger behind his glasses. She was our age. Iris shivered again. They were silent, both probably thinking the same thing. What happened to her? Why was she buried here? Suddenly, the snow didn't feel fun anymore. It was too dark out, too cold, too quiet. They felt too far from their houses. I'm cold, they both blurted out at the same time, startling each other. Their voices seemed to carry farther than they should have on the wind. Iris, let's go back. Daniel scrambled to stand up and grabbed Iris's hand again. first walking, then running through both clearings. The trees stood tall and dark, ominously as they passed by. The snow fell heavier, no longer looking like frosting. The white branches were now skeletal hands, waving them backward. Iris could almost feel it, a pull, trying to keep them there. I'll see you tomorrow, Daniel breathed, before letting her hand go and slipping through the back door to his house. Iris slipped through her own, forgetting to wipe her feet on the mat outside, not so carefully walking up the stairs and throwing all of her wet clothes into the closet. The darkness felt thick, the same way it had by the little clearing, like it followed her here. Still shivering, she trained her eye on her nightlight, but the small glow gave her little calm. She began her usual ritual of looking around to prove to herself that the pile of clothes in the corner wasn't an animal, that the tap, tap, tap in the window right now was just ice and not someone trying to get her to look up. But when she glanced at the window, it was into the black, round eyes of a little girl.
Oh, that's so good.
Thank you.
She would see what happened to my eyebrows when you said that the gravestone was in the snow angel's heart.
Oh,
Skyrocketed to the top of my forehead.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I love those type of
Amazing.
reactions.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Welcome.
Christian, let's hear from you next.
Great, thank you. Also, I've never had anybody call my work perfectly dreadful and had it feel like a compliment before, Julia, so I really appreciate that introduction. Hello, my name is Christian Mckay Heideker. I wrote this book, Scary Stories for Young Foxes, and it's about two incredibly young fox kits named Mia and Uli, who are separated from their dens at far too young an age. And now they are working through the forest and trying to find a den of their own. And along the way, they face many natural terrors that are actually retellings of classic horror stories. I thought I would read a little bit to you as well. The haunted season had arrived in the Antlerwood. The sky grayed, the leaves blushed red, and mist coiled through the trees like something alive. Even the pumpkins began to rot and show their true faces. On these chilled autumn nights, it was best for fox kits to remain near their den on the edge of the wood. There they could feast on apples that tumbled from high branches. They could hunt for smoky acorns and crunchy stick bugs and juicy mice. And when dusk turned to starlight, the kits could return to their den, tuck under their mother's fur, and be soothed by her heartbeat. Tell us a story, the alpha kit said one misty night. Make it scary, the fourth said, yipping and hopping. Yeah, said the third, snarling. So scary, our eyes fall out of our heads. Please stop biting my face, children, their mother said. The kits behaved themselves while she smoothed out a bed for the night. Let's see, she said. How about rattlebones? Mom, the beta said, rolling her eyes. You told us that story when we were 2 weeks, said the alpha. It's boring, said the fourth. Very well. Their mom began ripping out roots that had snuck through the den's walls. How about Willoughby Wallaby and the floating paw? Seriously? The fifth kit said. That story wouldn't raise the hackles on a field mouse, said the fourth. It's kit stuff, said the third. Well, their mom said, those are the stories I know. 7 little foxes sighed. Sorry to be a disappointment, she said, lying down. She paused and looked at the kits with all seriousness. But you must promise that no matter what you do tonight, you will not go to Bog Cavern. The kit's ears perked. What's Bog Cavern? The alpha asked. That's where the old storyteller lives, their mom said. If you go there, you'll hear a story so frightening, it will put the white in your tail. The kits stared at their thin, dusty brown tails with wide eyes. Wait a second, the four said, looking at the fluffy white end of their mom's tail. You heard the story? Only part, she answered, and I wouldn't repeat what I heard for 1,000 mice. The kits gave one another meaningful looks. They didn't want some toothless story like Willoughby Wallaby, which could be forgotten with a shiver and some milk and a lick on the cheek. They wanted a story so scary it would prove their bravery and change them forever. All except the little one, that was. She preferred the sound of her mom's heartbeat. Yes, it may have been wise for fox kits to stay close to the den once the leaves began to fall, but the fog and the frost and the old crimson moon had stirred something in their whiskers. And so they waited till all was quiet, save their mother's snoozing. And then 7 little foxes slipped out of their den with a mission to scare some white into their tails.
Ew. That's so good. I feel like
Yeah.
that's such a creative premise for a story. Like the foxes. I have to check that out for sure.
Listen, in a little bit, I'll tell you where I stole it from.
That's always good to hear.
Yes. And Eliza, we definitely want to hear all about your book.
Hi. So my book is called Beetle and the Hollow Bones. It's about it's a funny story about a young goblin girl who
Ooh.
makes friends with a ghost who haunts the local mall. The ghost can't leave and can't go home with her and hang out. And she has to come to the mall to hang out with them. And the mall sucks and is so boring. And there's nothing there and they don't have any money. And pretty soon after realizing that Bob Ghost can't leave, an old friend of Beetle's from when she was younger comes back to town, Cat Hollowbone, who is really successful and really smart and really pretty and really intimidating now, now that she's been away for a while. And the two of them quickly find out that Cat is sort of aligned with the enemy because her family used to own the land the mall was built on, and her aunt is trying to buy the land back so she can destroy the mall and rebuild their old house and get access to the horrible ancient catacombs underneath the building. And so the problem is there's nothing really wrong with that because the mall sucks so much, but there's unfortunately a child's soul trapped in it. So they have to figure out a way to release Blob Ghost from the mall before the mall is torn down. And eventually they kind of realize that they also need to help Cat understand that her aunt's way of doing magic is not exactly the best way. And I can't really read you I can't really read you a passage, but I can show you a few things. And so it's almost, I have a lot of trouble genre categorizing Beetle, but it definitely has a lot of elements of horror that are really important to me and really important to the way that I want the book to be read. So I was really, really happy to be part of the panel and part of Summer Scares because I have 2 more books coming and I think they get scarier and scarier as they go, which is good because there's going to be a little gap between the 2. So people have time to get older and get ready for the scarier stuff in books 2 and 3.
That's very exciting.
For sure. That's so cool. The
Oh, yes.
illustrations.
Thank you.
Are they both follow-ups to Beetle?
Yes, they are both follow-ups to Beetle.
Yeah.
So I'm working on the second one now.
Amazing. Yeah, it's funny you should say that because I wrote a Fox's sequel that was planned before the first one even came out. And I did the same thing. I was like, I'm going to turn the heat up on these kits and I'm going to make it way, way scarier. And that's the feedback I've gotten for sure. So
At
that's
vet's
nice.
office was terrifying.
Yeah. It's a little grisly. Yeah, pretty scary. I'm just gonna throw this detail out there if I may. So during the pandemic, I got a new neighbor directly upstairs. Their name is Kay, and they became my best friends just over the last couple of years because we were both like spending a lot of time alone, and so we just started hanging out. And they just happened to be a veterinary technician, which is incredible because I can just stick my cats in a to-go box and I have front door service when they just go to their vet's office. But I was working on foxes too, and was telling them like some of the details about it because like the parallels of classic horror tropes and fox experiences. When I was telling the modern stories, I was like, I want to do a mad scientist. What would be the most ideal mad scientist? And that was a veterinarian. But how to make a veterinarian scary? And I was like working through that. Of course, all animals are afraid of veterinarians, but like, how do you like really bring that to life? And Kay shared with me this little detail that if you want to test an animal for rabies, if you genuinely need to find out if that animal has rabies, there's only one way to do it, and that is to saw its head off.
Really?
Yes.
Oh
Because
my
all
God.
of it is in the brainstem.
it's in the spine.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And
Wow.
that was just like one of those little details that was like, I didn't have to bend reality to horror. It
Mhm.
was just
It was right there.
already there.
Wow, I did
Yeah.
not know. I learned something today.
I mean, let's all learn a lot of things today. I would
Yay.
about both of your processes.
Oh, that's so funny. I was in a horror anthology about small animals, like small animal horror stories, called Timorous Beastie a couple of years ago. And it's so
Amazing.
funny that the interests lined up so much. I did a story with my friend Natalie Reese about a wasp who intercepts a queen ant and lays eggs in her, and the ants at home are totally brainwashed except for the protagonist ant, who is like, something's wrong, something's super wrong, something's going on. And
Wow.
it was like really like deeply based in all of the unbelievably weird stuff that I know about insect parasitism.
Yeah. Like the
Yes.
cordyceps virus.
Yeah, like
Yes.
cordyceps. And then wasps love to, they don't often do this with ants, but they do it with caterpillars. They'll like lay eggs inside of a caterpillar, and the caterpillar will keep eating and eating and eating and growing and growing and growing until it's ginormous, and then the wasps hatch, and it's horrible.
That is so mean.
Yeah,
As a
it's so
wasp.
gross.
Like, but they're just trying to
Pretty
become
mean.
butterflies, and this is what happens. Like, that is so mean.
Someone needs to have a word with them.
Yes, I know it was a reason I didn't like
wasps
wasps.
be born.
I think like this is just a moment to appreciate that as humans, we do not lay our eggs in other species. Like,
Not even if we try really
we're doing
hard.
one thing right.
Oh, finally.
at least we have that.
Yeah.
yeah, we don't have a lot going for, but that one thing.
You would love that book though, Kristen. There's so many really cool stories in there that seem like they align right up with what you're doing.
Timorous
Beastie. I can
Timorous
email you.
Beasties. Please do. I would love to read that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Hopefully there's copies still out there. It was a few years ago, and it was like a Kickstarter book. So
Oh, rad. Okay. Yeah, I'll hunt one down. India, did you have a moment where like you got the shivers by learning something in the world that found its way? Or just
Yes,
a revelation?
absolutely. I have two things. So, like, my idea for the Forgotten Girl really came about, the whole abandoned segregated cemetery thing came about because we actually have one in my hometown. And then I have two family members buried there. They died before I was born. And then my grandmother would always take me to the cemetery because it's her aunt and her son. He died when he was 5 years old. So sad. But she would always take me, and then she would be like, you know, this cemetery was once segregated. Like this was like the blacks only side, and this is the whites only side over here. And I was like, I never knew, like, you know, you always hear about like different like schools and water fountains and stuff being segregated, but you never hear about like cemeteries. And so I was like, that is so like strange or whatever, and sad, obviously. So
Yeah.
the part that made me like get my wheels turning about it being like a horror was so my great aunt, her headstone was like this way or whatever, and then my uncle, his headstone was like this way, but over time they've turned to face each other, like
Ooh.
real life, really. I have pictures and everything of
Wow.
like how it turned. They literally face each other, like they're like diagonal from each other, but they've turned, like it's crazy. So
Wow.
yeah, and so I was like, okay, there's a story here. Like I can do like a scary story about this. And so after I've been researching like cemetery or abandoned cemeteries, some segregated, some not, across the country, I realized that so many abandoned cemeteries have buildings on top of them. Like I found out a couple of years ago that there was an apartment building in Miami that was built on top of a cemetery. There's parts of UGA built on top of a cemetery. And I'm like, this is so creepy. And it reminds me of like Poltergeist, the movie, because they build
Oh
in there.
yeah.
So I'm like, wait a minute, like this is actually happening in real life. So like, even though the Forgotten Girl isn't like buried, I mean, even though the cemetery in the Forgotten Girl isn't like under the house, which I could have done that, but I felt like I've seen Poltergeist too many times that I would just start to like subconsciously take from the movie. So I was like, I need to like kind of put some type of separation there. So I was like, it needs to be like in the house, like in the neighborhood, so they can find the cemetery, and then the ghost just comes to them versus like the ghost already being there. So yeah, those were like kind of like strange and scary but true facts about cemeteries.
I can just imagine, that's so creepy and interesting. I can just imagine you reading through a draft and coming to the line, they're here, and doing that.
Yeah,
I stole
like no
that. Dang it.
backspace.
I'm so curious how that happened with the two heads. Is there a tree near them?
I have no idea. I'm sure there's like probably some explanation. They've been there forever, so maybe they're just like
so
starting to move,
wild.
and then I don't know.
Yeah. Because
I
I
don't
live
know.
I live near a super old cemetery, and I'm trying to think what like natural like phenomena would cause that, because the one near my place is has like this ginormous like gorgeous tree in the middle of it, and so
Ooh.
it's like pushed, some of the roots of the tree have pushed the
Oh.
headstones up, and so they're like rising out of the ground slowly,
Oh
which is
my
really
gosh.
really wild to
Yeah, it
see.
gets, and then the cemetery is so old. Like I went like a couple years ago, like when I was first doing the Forgotten Garden, I actually looked around, and there are like headstones from like the 1800s. Like it's so old. So it could definitely be something like that.
Yeah,
But I
same
don't
in
know.
my
I just feel
neighborhood.
like it's just like
I
ghostly
mean, I
stuff.
think we definitely know what caused it.
Yeah.
It was true love, right? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
yeah,
I feel like
there's
that.
there's no science here. We're on a horror panel.
I kind of right. I feel like, you know, sometimes like I feel like, you know, things have scientific explanations, but some things it's just like it just doesn't. Like some things are just too spooky, and it's like there's really no explanation for this. Well, I guess on the flip side, it can happen like in a good way. Like, oh, there's no real explanation for this nice thing
Yeah.
that happened. But then I feel like
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
like, okay, there's no real explanation for why this kind of spooky thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like both.
India, that puts me in mind of something that for some reason I had not applied to horror right now. But I teach at a sci-fi and fantasy workshop a lot,
Oh,
and
nice.
I've kind of been like noticing this pattern when I'm talking to my students, where I tell them that if they want to be reading like really cutting edge fantasy, then like read authors of color and queer authors, because like the like Western white guy, sponges have all just been wrung dry beyond compare. I really think that like RF Kuang and NK Jemisin, they're doing like the most interesting things. And I think it's just because those are genuine like stories with incredible histories that weave this new type of magic into it. And like exactly what we should be paying attention to, and it just dawned on me that like that those are like these, that's what these books are, like bringing like a freshness to the genre that has not really been explored. And like for me, like I'm going to the animal world because nothing else like in the tradition that had come before me was interesting enough. Like I wanted to spin it in a new direction that did not have anything to do with me or anything. I don't think that would be very fascinating. So yeah, I hadn't really thought about that in horror too. I think that's probably where we need to head.
That is
you don't think about it.
Yeah, that's a really good like point, I guess. And I think I was on another panel with an author, and she was talking about like even thriller. She was a Black woman, and she was saying like even with thriller, you have to kind of take a different spin because like the situation surrounding like the actual event is kind of different. Like even in The Forgotten Girl, like she's experiencing a little racism in the beginning of the book, and it kind of influences how she kind of relates to the ghost, and it kind of makes her sympathize with her a little bit. But I feel like it's just like little things like that kind of just change the course of the book just because of like her being Black and stuff like that. And then you have to kind of think like, okay, realistically, what would a Black person do in this situation, but still make it like really scary. And so yeah, that's like a super good point. And then I love what you said about like going to the animal world, because like I said earlier, like going to foxes is just it's like innovative. Like I think that's so cool. I never would have thought of that.
Is this the moment where I admit?
Yes, I'm ready to hear.
Great, awesome.
I want to hear about how you say
it. When I was a very, very small child, I was obsessed with these books. The Spooky
yeah.
Bears books.
Wait, I didn't know they made spooky books.
Of course.
Where have I been?
Absolutely. So
I only have like the Christmas ones.
Oh, well, let's solve that. Let's solve that immediately here. Everybody sit down, make a circle. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
So, I would love to, but some other time. I absolutely loved these. And so when I was not really finding the success I wanted in publishing, and a lot of that was because I was just sort of like chasing trends, or whatever my agent agreed would probably be the best thing moving forward. I finally was like, okay, well, writing is ludicrously difficult. I'm just going to write what I really adore, and it's stuff like this. And so when I first wrote Scary Stories for Young Foxes, they walked on two paws and wore little outfits and like trounced down to Mrs. Badger's shop to like buy a goose for dinner. And
kind of mad at you. I'm a little mad at you for changing that.
Listen, okay, if you email me, I'll email you the original story.
Okay, great.
I will. Yeah. It's like 11 pages. You too, India, if you want it.
I'm all in.
Okay, awesome.
Because I'll read the real one now, and then I'll go back and read that one, and then I'm going to compare.
Because imagine if they walked on two paws, but still got captured by the rabies doctor. Like, this is so much.
Yeah. Oh, there's a moment. There's definitely a moment that's scarier than anything that happens in this book. So yeah, I gave that to my agent, and he was like, 3 problems. Number 1, short story collections don't sell. Number 2, as I'm sure you both learned, but then like lucky us, scary stories were not doing well at the time. And number 3, everybody hates anthropomorphism, except for Eliza, I guess, which thank you, Eliza.
Oh my God, you have no idea.
I was like, okay, fair enough. So I went through and just knocked down all the walls between the stories. and then made it a novel, and then like, you know, added a lot of coziness for all of the horror because it is incredibly scary. And then I finally just tried to make the stories as scientifically accurate as possible. But that turns out to be even scarier. Like,
Yeah.
scarier. Like, you know, nature is horrifying, as we have already touched
Mhm.
on. Yeah, and so yeah, it created like a really interesting challenge. But this is where it came from, and I'll always give him credit.
I have
That's
to check
so
those
fun.
out too.
That's so fun. I love the idea of illustrated horror, because we've moved away from it so much, like in like modern publishing or modern Western publishing, but like we've kind of like scooched out of having like illustrated horror novels. But when you pick up like an old copy of Dracula, it's got those big etchings.
Yeah.
So I'm itching to try and sell one of those, because I'm a glutton for punishment and I want to do whatever I want. So eventually I'm gonna try and sell one. So you guys can like wait and see if I manage to do it. But I really do. God, I want to. Oh, I know. Like this is exactly what I mean. Like, oh, it's so
They're
nice
so
to
pretty.
see that. Yeah.
I just want to give credit to
Mhm.
Junyi
that's
Wu,
great.
the illustrator, who lives in San Francisco. I've never met her before, but she's just
Gorgeous.
unbelievable. Yeah.
That is great. I
Yeah.
can't wait to get my hands on that. I'm like ready.
It's so
Julie
funny.
has copies, right?
It's so funny that everybody hates anthropomorphism, because one second.
Uh-oh.
Nice.
It's so funny and crazy,
Amazing.
because
I love that.
I
wow.
literally have it behind me. This was my Halloween costume for last year, and that I made out of paper mache.
Is that from something?
No, I made it up.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's so
beautiful.
awesome.
I love
Thank
that.
you.
Do y'all remember that book? I think it was called, maybe I'm getting the name wrong. It was like Banicula or something like that. And it was like the
love
bummy.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
I love horror at every age. And I used to my Beetle experience is a lot of the horror that I'm drawing on for Beetle is that I worked at a mall for several years while I was coming up with the concept. So, and then we would have kids come in and have Malloween, and it was unreal. Like you just see this parade of Batman, and then the biggest thing that affected me about it was that kids would come in, and the kids wanted horror. Kids wanted to read horror, but their parents were like, you're not going to be able to sleep. You're going to cause trouble for me.
Yeah.
If you read horror, you might cause me a problem. You might bother me with it. And it was like, but they want to.
Wow.
They want to. You can't stop them from finding it. I mean, there's other stuff in the book that there's a reason that there's no queer stuff on the cover. I wanted it to be stealth because I wanted kids to be able to go get it from the library without people noticing, and bring it home. And a lot of adults aren't vetting their kids' books, and they're not vetting them when they're at their local library or at school. And we're seeing stuff in like Florida and Texas and stuff with this, where being able to sneak in and find a book about something like that is a big problem. Apparently, it's
wait.
We have to stop people from doing that.
Are you telling me that the people who came up with the "Don't Say Gay" bill don't read books?
It's so funny.
Wow.
It's so funny. And I just, because like one of the reasons why I'm like drawn towards books with this is that books are inherently like a private medium. So you're reading by yourself, and your mom can't walk through the room, or your dad can't walk through the room and go, what is that? Like they're not going to be really looking over your shoulder, especially with written text, and go, what are you doing? Like, what is that? Like they will, but you can just lie because they're not reading it usually. So that was a big draw with me with Beetle, kind of like the real life horror of like, what if I get caught looking at something like this? What if I get caught looking at two girl characters kissing? And so like expanding on that as I'm moving through the series and kind of reflecting that that specificity of experience is part of it. And then there's also the like extremely extremely funny gothicness of malls. And I'm not talking about mall goths as a concept. I'm talking about like the literary gothic, like the point where like when the gothic became, I'm gonna get the dates wrong, but when literary gothic became like in vogue, it was right after the Romantic period. Am I right? It's right after the Romantic period.
I have no idea.
Everybody in the Romantic period is writing about these gorgeous like Arthurian castles, and all of this like wealth and this prosperity. And then right as like Romantic period is trailing off, the economic situation in the like in Europe drops, and all of the castles fall into ruin, and everybody starts writing about ruin, and everybody starts writing about horror. And you know, you get you're getting oh my god, I can't remember anything when I'm talking, but you're getting a lot of you're getting gothic horror. And so this is something that I noticed about my local mall is that there's this huge like prosperity element to the mall. Like you're supposed to, it's like a casino. You're supposed to go in and like revel in the cool marble floors or whatever. And like when I was really
my
young,
mall is so like boring.
Yeah, my mall's horrible. And I worked there. I was so working there. And so I would come out at night, and all of the crane machines that yell at you would still be on, but everything would be dark. And so you'd hear in the distance like happy electronic screaming coming from like way down the like empty corridor of the mall. Scary. And you hear the like metal gates like shuttering and closing. And so that was like the big horror element that I was drawing from, was like, this place is so weird and so scary. And anybody who goes into one, because they're all crumbling because we're in an economic downturn after a period of prosperity. So like all of these places are just turning into these piles of rot, and it's really weird and gross. And it's something that I was writing this before COVID. And so now tons of businesses are just completely going down. And so everybody, all these kids are like watching the like, especially people who are in like the same like kind of like areas that the book takes place in, like more rural. You're watching businesses just rot around you, and you're watching, if you go to the mall to like go to Payless and get shoes for school, or you know, you're like going back to the mall for the first time since COVID, if it's even still open, you're going in and going, oh my god, what's going on? Oh my god, because they're all empty, everything's gone. Yeah. And so there's a ghoulishness to this that I thought was so fun. I was like, oh, I can't wait to
your dilapidated malls are just your modern take on crumbling castles.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I was like, I was looking up like, well, what was the deal with my local mall when it opened? And they were like, we got the marble from Italy. And it was like, why? Why? This place sucks. And it always sucked. It was the worst place to go. It was always awful. Why did you get the marble from Italy?
That was the draw.
From what I can tell, luxury is just measured by how many emissions you wasted to get it. So yeah, that's so what? Oh, please, sorry.
Sorry.
Please.
Okay. Yeah.
I choose you.
I was just gonna say, like, when you were talking about kids like loving to read horror and stuff like that, were you guys the kids that loved horror? Because I honestly, like, surprisingly enough, I wasn't like that kid. Like, I love like certain pockets of horror, like Goosebumps and things like that. But honestly, and even still to this day, I'm very much a scaredy cat. Like, I don't like a lot of scary things. And so like writing as a horror story was just totally out of my comfort zone, because it's just not something that's like my life. I really try to make it like, you know, nothing. It's just like, I don't want to see any bad news. I don't want to, I mean, obviously I keep up with the news, but like, you know, outside of what I need to do, it's like, I only watch like rom-coms and stuff like that, except for like the occasional, like, you know, okay, I'll watch Poltergeist, or okay, I'll watch like this, blah, blah, blah. But then like I wrote a scary story. But one thing that really drew me to writing it, and I think the reason even that I don't like to read it is that my imagination kind of like, it's hard to turn it off. Like when we watch scary movies, like as a family, like they got me to watch Halloween Kills, which I was like, I'm gonna do this. Like I'm 30 now. It's time. I need to read like I need to watch like another scary movie. The whole time I'm horrified. And at the end, everyone was like, wow, that was like a dumb movie. Let's go on about our day. But it's still like running over in my mind. Like even when I'm sleeping, like I hear things outside. I'm like, is it him? Is it Michael Myers? Like I'm just like thinking about it all the time. And so it was easy to watch, or it was easy to write The Forgotten Girl, because I can kind of like take what's scary to me and then like put it in the books. But I'm just not really someone that enjoys like that type of scare anymore. I don't know if it's because I'm older or what. Like even I remember like, okay, do y'all remember that movie that came out? I think it was called like The Nun or something like that. It was like
I don't think I saw that one. I know I saw like stuff about it.
Yeah, so like
a Conjuring spinoff.
Yeah,
right?
it was like The Conjuring or something like that. So then I'm just like home alone watching TV, and then all of a sudden the commercial just comes on, but the commercial is literally just The Nun. Like it's just like you're watching TV and all of a sudden it's like, bah! And I'm like by myself, and I'm like trying to cover my eyes, turn the TV off. I'm home by myself, and I'm like, this nun is like, she's coming. Like there's nothing I can do about it. Like I was
it's like, excuse me, I did not invite this nun.
I did not invite this
She was just
into my life. I was so upset. So yeah, that's me. I'm really scared of stuff.
First of all, when we start this email thread, Eliza, are you a pretty big horror film buff?
Yes.
We'll
I just watched Ginger Snaps and loved it. It was so good.
It's so good.
Ginger Snaps is so good.
Was it so good? Was it so good?
The silly gore only made it better.
I can do silly gore like Scream or something like that, and I can do like, oddly enough, some suspense like the others, like that old movie with Nicole Kidman. I love
that was fun
because
it's like
one. You never actually see anything. It's just like really suspenseful.
I think that's so much scarier. Those are the ones that like
Paranormal
really
Activity,
get me.
where you see
I can't do that. I can't
one
do
of the scariest. Yeah, that's
I think for me, my like hard no is like possession and like the paranoid. I can't do that because I feel like it's like too real or something. Like I feel like it could really happen.
No, I completely agree with you. I think I'm actually like, I think that like as far as possession movies go, we need to stop making them because people are giving their kids exorcisms in real life, and exorcisms went all over the world, went up after The Exorcist, of people like in their homes giving their kids exorcisms because they didn't like what they were doing. So exorcisms went up like crazy, and they have not gone back down. And there were really few exorcisms before The Exorcist came out. And I'm not normally like, I'm not like a big believer in like the Jaws theory or whatever, like, fiction is reality or whatever, but I really wish we'd stop making these possession movies, because I knew a girl in high school whose parents gave her an exorcism. And I was like,
how do you give someone? I was like, oh my gosh, this is my thing, right? So like I'm like somebody, I'm pretty like, I guess religious, I guess that's a word. I guess that's the word I can use. So when like you read the Bible, literally only Jesus could perform exorcisms. Like there are literally moments in the Bible where other people tried to perform exorcisms and it did not work. So I'm like, really like
wait, hold on. I'm sorry. So sorry, but India, are you telling me that people misread the Bible? My mind's, I'm learning so much today. My mind just keeps getting blown over and over.
It's mind blowing.
So scary. It's almost that it's easier. Yeah. It's almost like it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven or something.
Weird. Yeah.
It's really, like, really strange. It's
not
mind blowing
anymore, but I know it.
It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing to me because even like the more I read it, I'm like, people are misinterpreting so much. And it's like, I don't want to get on my soapbox and be like, people are misinterpreting so much, because like that's annoying and stuff like that. But it's like, people misinterpret so much, or they leave stuff out, or it's like, you said this part, but you didn't say this part, and this part needs to go together for it to make sense. And it's like, it kind of blows my mind, but it's like, nobody wants to be like that person that's like, everybody come read, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I just have to keep it to my.
No, I get it, because I
of-
was in Catholic school for years, and I got like 8 years of doctrine, like education, that like now all I can do with it is write horror.
And then like I remember one time in college,
Amazing.
I took world religion because even though I'm Christian, I just like, want to hear about other religions or whatever. So when we got to we got to Christianity, and he said something that was wrong, and I was like, this is wrong. Like this is not scriptural. And he was like, yes, it is. So we got into an argument, and I was like, pull out. I had to do this. Pull out your Bible. Let's pull out our Bible and do this. Like, it's like dangerous to do that.
So, like misinterpreting things, like if parents were to come to either of you and say, I would not let my kid read your book because it has, these horror elements or whatever, what do you say? Like, what do you tell them they're misinterpreting about that horror?
That's such a good oh, you go ahead. I've been talking enough.
No, you haven't really. I think I would go, stop them from finding it.
Oh,
stop
I thought you said
reading
stalk. Like
no,
them.
Stop. No, I would say, well, then stop them from reading it. Figure out a way to stop them.
Basically, like,
they're gonna know.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
If they want to read it, they're gonna find it. You can't stop them from finding it. They're gonna find it no matter what.
Reverse
it's true, and I think
on the parents to get them to play reverse psychology on their kids accidentally.
Right.
Like the Fox mom at the beginning of this story, she wants them to go to Bog Tavern. She wants them to go hear those scary stories. So if you're like, tell them not to read it, it's too scary, and the parents are like, kids, don't read this, it's too scary, the first thing they're gonna do is go get Beetle.
Read it. Yeah.
The old series of unfortunate events trick.
Yes.
For me, I would say like, honestly, I would say, like, just like I was telling you guys, like, I try to make what I can of my world not really scary. I'm really like a soft and fuzzy girl that writes horror. So I feel like a lot of that comes through in my book. Like, it's like, I try to make it really, really scary, but since I'm in like the confines of like a standalone middle grade, it's really scary, but I do kind of wrap it up in a bow at the end. Like I kind of like to do that for kids, because I just think about a kid like me that would have picked up a book that was like super scary, and then it was just like it had like a traumatic ending. Like it really would have scarred me. So I try to like make it really as scary as I can, like in the beginning and middle, and then closer to the end, it kind of wraps up in a nice little cute like bow or whatever, because you've been scared enough throughout the whole book. And then I feel like my book also, like, it has like themes of forgiveness and love and stuff like that. It's just a horror story too, because I feel like, in the world, there's a lot of that. A lot of things happen at the same time. Like it's scary stuff happening, but then it's also like good stuff happening over here. It's scary stuff happening over here. So I feel like, that's kind of like my whole approach to writing horror.
It helps kids see how to deal with that.
Yeah.
And and to your point about them, they're gonna find it. True. Let's maybe direct them to this lovely book that has been recommended for their age group.
Or just talk to them about like whatever is supposedly making you uncomfortable about her book. Like just kind of okay, y'all can just talk about it, like either before or after. If they have questions, they can come to you and ask you.
I wish that when I was at the bookstore, I wish that I had seen more of that. I really, really do, because I saw a lot of parents that were like, well, my son won't read a book about a girl. Because that's about he's not going to understand. He's not going to like it because it's about a girl. And
They're only
but then
51%
boys
of the
would come
population.
through. Boys would come through and were less discriminating because they were in here to find a book and not in here to like project their identity in any way. They were just in here to find a good book. I don't know. I feel like I'm definitely writing for kids, not parents, but the best parents are the ones who can have a conversation with their child. And I think that's almost about like what they like in a way where they're not being belittling or trying to control it too much. Like beyond like not reading stuff that's way too mature for you, that you're not going to understand anyway. Being able to have that conversation with a parent, I feel like is a rare and incredibly precious thing. I would wish that everybody could do that.
I was going to say about the mature thing, because when I was younger, there was this book that everybody was reading. And it was like, it wasn't like, it was just too old for us. Like, it was like, we were in middle school and the book like had a lot of themes that were like for high school kids and stuff like that. And a lot of my friends were seeking to read it. And my mom was like, you can't read this book or whatever. Cause it was like for older kids. I was like,
what was the book?
I can't even remember the name of it, but I know. But I will say that I read it late when I got older, and I was like, my mom was kind of right about this. Like, I would have hated to read this, but it wasn't like what the subject matter was. I guess it was like, okay, you're like PG-13 age, but you can't go to an R-rated movie. It was more like something like that versus like not like, oh, this is a PG-13 movie, but I don't want you to watch it because of what they're talking about, if that makes sense. It was just like a little, like, you wouldn't let like your 12-year-old watch like Game of Thrones or something. It was like something like that. Like, you see what I mean? So it was like, so then when I did finally like kind of, I forgot about it for a while and then went back and I was like, this is my chance. And I was like, oh yeah, I probably wouldn't have liked this when I was younger. So in like that kind of case, it makes sense. But it's like, if it is for their age group, then there's like, it's for their age group.
Yeah. I've gotten some kid emails because kids will email me occasionally and I really like it and it's really fun. And I've gotten some kid emails that are like, oh, I'm reading your webcomic. I'm reading Demon Street. And I do have an urge when kids email me that to go, okay, but Demon Street is for readers that are older than Beetle readers. But like, I can't stop them. And also Demon Street will shake them off anyway if they aren't ready to read it.
If they aren't ready,
And there's nothing, there's nothing in there. There's like brief, like Demon Street has like really scary situations and is about scary topics, but there's nothing that like, I think, I'm going to get like an angry email from a parent about. So I'm just like, okay, have at it. Like, if you are not shaken off by the like reading level or whatever of this thing that I'm putting out online for free, and have been doing for like 10 years. But this like scary horror thing that I make, if you're not shaken off by it, then maybe you'll get something really cool out of it. I have no way of knowing. So I definitely, I really love to encourage reading up. And I think it's like, it's definitely a situation of like, oh my God, it's so great when they can talk to their parents about it or talk to like an older sibling about it in a safe way, where it's like, okay, well, this made me think about this. This made me think about this. That's like the ideal situation that I want to see the most, is like people having genuine conversations about stuff that's challenging.
And it's true what you said, like if they don't feel ready for it, they're going to stop. Because like when I was in middle school, I tried to read Gossip Girl 3 times and I was like, God, I cannot get into this book. Like my mind just wasn't there yet. Like I was so like fantasy, middle grade. So when I was trying to read Gossip Girl, I was like, rich kids, like I don't care about this at all. But then like later on, I was like, okay, I'll give it another try. So yeah, they'll just like, if they're not ready, they're not going to read it. They're not going to force themselves to read it. Or I don't know. Maybe if they are, if their friends are, but they won't enjoy it.
The internet's already so scary that like there's nothing we can do that's worse than a kid getting online for 20 minutes.
I actually got an email, like angry letter from an actual kid because she said that the Forgotten Girl, I should only write scary novels for adults because the world is already so scary for kids.
Oh no, oh my
And
God.
yes, I was like, wait, oh my gosh. But then I read her letter because I think, well, actually, she was talking about the girl in the lake because they have like a trailer that they show at Scholastic Book Fair. And the trailer is pretty scary. I'm not gonna lie. Like if it was me, I would be scared, like totally. So I wrote her back and I was like, like I'm right here with you. Like I don't like scary stuff either. And I was just telling her, my whole theory about, the book has like it wraps up nicely at the end. And I personally don't think that that's scary, but I know that it's like a matter of opinion. But I'm like, it wraps up nicely at the end. And I just write stories so people can see, like, you can have a happy ending, scary story happening in the beginning, blah, blah, blah. So I hope I encourage her. But yeah, I was like, I kind of related to her in that way because I could see like myself being like 11 or 12 and seeing like a scary trailer for a movie and being like highly upset that I saw it because I was highly upset when I saw the Nun trailer and I was like 25 or something like that. So yeah, I could relate to her.
There's this really strange perception, and it's interesting because like I think kids get it intrinsically, but I think for some reason parents do not. I think they have this expectation that like, yeah, the world is incredibly scary.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give them a scary book to read, then that will add to the scary. Like it will double their, scary experience. As opposed to, these horror novels are like, you can put your nervous system on a roller coaster,
yes,
from the comfort of your own home, and you get to ride through that and be safe and feel those experiences so that if you do face real things in the world, then you're prepared for them.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, when I was like digging into the different genres that I was exploring in Foxes, I really wanted to ask myself like why we tell particular types of scary stories. Like why do we tell ghost stories or vampire stories or zombie stories? What makes them unique? And so I've been talking to kids a lot about this idea, and we like brainstorm, and what we usually come up with is that like ghost stories are about exploring the past, obviously, with a graveyard or with, a dilapidated mall turned castle of sorts, But then like a zombie story for me is like, well, this person seems safe, right? And maybe you even recognize them. Maybe you know their face. Maybe they're your mom, but something has changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they watched too much Fox News and now they are a Danish, like seriously, like what is like the attack on the Capitol other than a zombie horde, like this mindless, like no evidence attack, and then
that's
like
actually good. That's a good metaphor right there.
yeah, for sure. So like a zombie, it's like what do you do when someone that you should love and trust is unrecognizable? They've just become a hunger,
Mm-hmm.
And then how is that different from vampires who have to be invited inside, and there's actually something pretty alluring about them, like we make vampires attractive. And for me, when I talk to the kids, I'm like, well, how is that not like drugs, say, where you have to invite that into your life, and it's amazing. Like by the time I get to like werewolf, and I do as many monsters as I can, and I say, like how is a werewolf different than a zombie or a vampire? And the answer is like, how does a zombie feel like after it eats brains? It doesn't feel anything. It's a zombie. How does a vampire feel after it drinks blood? Satiated for the time being, right? But like it's terrible satiated because you're cursed and you have to keep killing in order to make that work. But how does a werewolf feel? They feel ashamed and
horrified.
instantly, instantly
You just
the
threw up a
kids-
toe. That's bad. The
Right,
cops
right.
are going to be after you now.
Zombie
you wake
movies are
up
the
and
scariest.
you're
Ugh.
Yeah, you wake up
That's
and
like
you're
my top 2
surrounded
of
by
things that I can't watch.
bloodshed. We won't recommend any zombies. But like whenever I bring up werewolves, the kids are instantly like, "Ooh, alcohol," because they're temporarily that monster,
Oh, yeah.
right? And then
That's
it
a
goes
good
away.
one.
Interesting.
Or we talk about mental health. So I mean, this is a very long way of saying that I think that these genres are specifically designed to untie those knots in our hearts that keep us from engaging with the world a little more with a little more bravery or understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting is going back to the well of these like classic monsters repeatedly and going back in time a little bit or a little bit further or a little bit further, and you get totally different perspectives based just on how far in time you go back. So you're like hopping back like to the like early 2000s and the late 90s, and you're talking about like a lot of like the allure of like you've got like Interview with the Vampire, and it's like a very like you get a lot of like really interesting overlap with vampires in particular and homosexuality, where one of the earliest vampire stories is Carmilla, and this is like a like homophobic screed essentially, but there's something really weirdly human about it that makes it incredibly alluring when you go back to that well and go, oh, there's something really interesting going on here. And I've never seen an adaptation of Carmilla that had the like gross raw power of the original. And then you go further back and there's a version of the vampire whose name I'm forgetting. But there's I believe this is a Filipino vampire where they specifically, when they like rise from the dead, go after the people they loved most first. And they are the most ready to kill the people who they had the strongest connection to. And you get this like web of like human tradition and human ideas. And no matter what monster you pick, there's a ginormous amount of stuff to pull. I had a friend who was worried about writing about vampires because he had seen somebody say that vampires are all metaphors for the wealthy because of Dracula. And I was like, no. No, because Dracula isn't just a metaphor for the wealthy. Dracula was written in the United Kingdom in the 1800s, I think. I'm so bad with dates. But Dracula was in no small part about xenophobia. Like you can't just, it's never just one thing. And I think that's what's so fascinating about the genre is that there's an enormous amount of stuff you can do with every single thing. Like instead of going to the well you mentioned with zombies, you could go to the horror of illness. And how is that experience different from I'm looking into the eyes of someone I trusted and then they're now a danger to me? Like where does that overlap? And so many people have gone to this well, but it's so interesting that you can go in wildly, vastly different directions depending on what part of the like ocean you're willing to put your hand into and pull something out. And that's I think what's so like deep and rich to me about horror is that there's such an infinite spectrum of this.
Yeah. And like with a light touch, you can include shades of all of those things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. When I talk about vampires now, I specifically am trying to steer it away from like the xenophobic and anti-Semitic, places that it has dwelled in at times. But let's please bring back the vampire that goes after their closest loved ones, because like that's such a human thing. Like when people get brainwashed, say, or they have a desperation about them, like a hole in their heart. They cling onto the people who are closest, or they try to convert them to their way of seeing, even if it's completely corrupted, just so that they feel safer about themselves. So those vampires are alive and well in the world, and we should probably be writing about them.
It's kind of like Bird. Did y'all watch Bird Box? That movie?
I did not see Bird Box.
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
It was one of those movies where, like, after everyone watched it, they were like, "Okay, you ready to go to bed?" And I was like, "No, we have to talk about the symbolism before we can go to bed." Because I was like, "So, what do y'all think the monsters symbolize and stuff like that?" Because I felt like it was so, like, you could watch it one way and think like, "Oh, there's an imaginary monster, you see it and you die or whatever." But what I found so interesting about Bird Box was, like, or at least the movie, I didn't read the book, was that the people would see it and they immediately wanted someone else to see, it was like people were so, like, desperate to open other people's eyes and look at this monster, and then they would just, like, perish or want to kill themselves. And I feel like that could be a metaphor for so many different things. Like, kind of like even what you were saying about, like, oh, you've been brainwashed and you want people to see this thing, or everybody wants everybody to look at something bad. At the time, my theory was that Bird Box was social media, like, come look at this bad thing on social media with me or whatever. But now it's like, it could be so many other things, like, you know, come look at this conspiracy theory, or come look at this, like, anything. And it was just so, and the thing that was so interesting about it was that the way you had to get through to, like, safety was you had to be blindfolded. And I thought that was, like, so creative, because it's like you had to rely on, you know, your other senses. It was like, and then it's even kind of like I don't know. It was just, I don't know.
Yeah.
What pops up for me with that is, like,
you're right.
There's a like double backwards horror situation that you could go to, where it's like, what, like, religions are having you deliberately blind yourself to reality in order to move through the world, and what if taking off the blindfold is the only way to survive in the, like, there's so much you could do with that. And premises are so broad like that. Like, there's something so alluring about monsters that, like the way that you were talking, Kristen, about, like, moving away from stuff, moving away from, like, the stereotype aspects of this. There's something so alluring about that well that almost is as, like, scary as the monsters, because when you go to, like, a movie like Dracula's Daughter, or Carmilla, or something like that, with that eye of, like, there's a homophobia here, and yet when you're looking at it, like, you can't resist turning it over and over in your hands and going, what do I do with this? What do I do with it? Like, how do I like, not quite how do I fix this, but, like, what do I do with this? There's something that becomes so entrancing about those subjects in and of themselves. Like, I want to write a vampire book so bad. I have to do it. I have to write a vampire book. I'm desperate to, because there's so much there's so much meat. I want to bite it. I'm a vampire.
Mission accomplished. Eliza, this was all just a ruse to get you to write a vampire book.
Surprise!
That was already going to happen. Already happening.
I guess we didn't need to do all that.
Oh my gosh. This has all been so amazing. I love all the conversations and where it's gone today. We are close to time, but I want to give you all a chance to chime in with any final thoughts. I'm just going to throw out that, as we've talked about, the breadth of the genre and, like, all of the things it can accomplish. There's also, especially in, I think, children's horror, like, such a range in how it's presented to readers. And the scary stories that might keep some kids up at night, which is what they're going for, they're there. But then there are also some really sweet ones, like yours, Eliza. Like, it's got, like, some really tense situations that pop up, but like there's a lot that's just like really cute and fun and whimsical. And Christian, yours gives like breathers for little readers to sort of like have a moment in between.
Yeah. I carry like, because I think my book's scary. Like I get that feedback from kids a lot. Like it's genuine and they don't expect it. They think it's going to be cute and cuddly.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I've done so many like horrible things to animals at this point that I see their spirits wherever I go. Like right now, yeah, I see like just a wall of spirits staring at me, animal spirits. And
is it the wall
just
that's behind her?
Uh-huh.
Oh, you see it too?
There it is.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Phew, I thought I was crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like there's animal spirits like looking at you from somewhere all the time.
Oh no, they're everywhere. That was such like a gentle scoot to the side.
Like,
Very sly.
Yes.
Well, what do you like really quickly? So yours is sweet, Eliza. India, what is yours? Is it like creepy, spooky?
I would definitely give creepy, scary. Like I get a lot of feedback that my book is super scary, and I'm like, I just am always in disbelief. Like I cannot believe I wrote something scary. Like I just can't believe it. So I get that feedback a lot. So creepy, spooky, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely scary, but I feel like it also has a lot of other moments built in to the plot where you're also getting like a lot of love, a lot of support.
There we go. That's the
a lot
goal.
of combating things with knowledge and doing your research and having a good discussion with your parents and your grandma. And I think it puts it all in context really, really well.
Thank you.
And a lot of like the horrors of history that it deals with are still sadly incredibly relevant today.
It's kind of like what I go for, like bridging the gap, because in my books there's always like a grandparent or like an older relative, and then that's like gone through like what the ghost has gone through, and then also it's kind of like a sometimes the truth is scarier than fiction type of thing. So that's kind of what I like to go for.
Yeah. So I love the range that we see in your books, all of them. And I think there really is something to appeal to like all readers, except maybe those who are just like strict reality, nonfiction, that kind of thing. But like for any, you don't have to call them horror. And I think that's also important because it's sort of a heavy term for middle grade books, but they all do amazing things in very different ways. And you all have been so wonderful talking about all of that today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you.